Dave and I are classic Star Trek fans. I think we both diverge at different points with some of the different shows that we maybe like more than others. And this is a great example of one of those kind of early divisive shows, quite frankly, where a lot of fans love it and a lot of fans not so much. But comicbook.com was reporting that Star Trek Voyager Documentary has broken some records and expands its crowdfunding campaign. So it says the Star Trek Voyager Documentary launched its Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign last week and broke the site's records for day one donations towards a documentary, earning $455,000. Boy, I wish we had that kind of budget on staycation, man. That'd be awesome. But anyway, after 1 week, it is the second most funded documentary in Indiegogo history, with $638,000, $6,038,348. Currently, the highest one documentary is Star Trek Deep Space Nine's retrospective "What We Left Behind." Their total was $647,891. So there actually looks like the Voyager documentary looks like it might actually overtake the Star Trek Deep Space Nine documentary, which incidentally, Dave and I still need to review that one. That really does need to be more of a priority on this show, because I own a physical copy of that documentary and I still haven't watched it. But I thought this was interesting. It looks like there is a lot of Voyager love out there. Voyager is one of the shows that I really was not that big of a fan of, to be honest with you. I do watch it quite often, actually, but part of the basically the Star Wars block, it's called All Star Trek on Heroes and Icons, which is a digital sub-channel. They basically do all the shows from the original series all the way to Enterprise 6 nights a week. So lots of times when, you know, I just want something in the background, or I'm playing on my phone, or actually even interacting with people on that thread, hashtag All Star Trek, you know, I'll start commenting about some of the episodes and things like that. But I did think it was interesting that this documentary is getting a lot of attention. And I'm curious about you, Dave, how you feel about Star Trek Voyager, and if you're looking forward to this documentary or not.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I wanted to watch the Deep Space Nine one, you know, What We Leave Behind. As far as the Voyager one, I mean, I love all this kind of documentary behind the scenes type stuff. You know, some of the more fun ones in recent memory was the one they did about the death of Superman Lives, about the Nicolas Cage Superman movie. That was actually a really fun documentary, directed and put together by John Schnepp. That was a really fun one. And in addition to that, too, I really enjoyed The Doomed, all about the Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie. Actually, this show ironically owes a little bit of initial inspiration, because the first time the gentleman ever turned on a camera and actually went onto YouTube or anything was actually to talk about meeting Joseph Galt, the original very first live action Dr. Doom for the Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie. And Doomed was a really fun documentary. So I enjoy these kind of things. I'd be totally down to watch it. Voyager is not my favorite of all the Star Trek shows. I didn't hate it or anything. You know, this will be controversial. I think I liked Enterprise better than Voyager. But you know, I'd be down to watch it.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. I actually do prefer Enterprise to Voyager, even though I have all sorts of continuity issues with Voyager, tons and tons and tons of them. But there are some things I enjoyed in Voyager. I actually liked Kes, which is kind of interesting because I know a lot of people hated Kes, and I actually liked her, even though I also like 7 of 9. You know, that's a controversy of Voyager, which I'm curious if they're going to address in the documentary, because it is a big controversy about the replacing of Kes with 7 on Voyager. I also like Tuvok. Tuvok is a character I enjoyed. I've actually met Tim Russ a couple times related to the Phoenix Comic-Con. And I'm trying to think if there's another character that I really enjoy. I think that's about it. Unfortunately, I think that's about it. Not that I hate all the other characters on Voyager. They just don't do a lot to me. The problem I have with Voyager is that Voyager, I've mentioned this before, in a lot of ways, Voyager was the culmination of almost an MCU-style event that Star Trek was playing with, because they established the Maquis in Star Trek The Next Generation. They established that basically the Cardassians and the Federation were doing this treaty, creating this demilitarized zone that was going to put a bunch of Federation planets in the Cardassian Empire. And that resulted in this conflict with the Maquis. The Maquis were basically Federation sympathizers who were fighting the Cardassians to gain their freedom. And they started that in Next Gen. That concept was started in Next Gen. They played with it a lot in Deep Space Nine. In fact, that episode was recently on Heroes and Icons, the episode where they had the beginnings of the Maquis, which is actually Sisko's like best friend, is like the creator of the Maquis, basically. He's a Federation officer who defects and decides to join the Resistance in the Maquis. And there's a big conflict between Sisko and his very good friend who's decided to go against the Federation, essentially. And then, of course, half the crew in Voyager was supposed to be Maquis. That was the idea, was it was going to be a mixed crew of Federation and Maquis, so you'd have some interesting conflict going on. That lasted like not even the pilot. I mean, seriously, like that's how long it lasted before they just axed that whole idea. And everybody was getting along, and Chakotay was no longer a terrorist, even though he was a leader in the Maquis. He becomes obsessed with science. I mean, they did some stuff that really made no sense, in my opinion. And that's my biggest problem I have with Voyager, is I feel there was so much lost potential there, because they could have done some really fun stuff with the crew fighting each other all the time, constantly at odds with each other, and it would have made sense in a Star Trek context. You know what I mean? They did all that work to create that situation. In fact, my understanding was the entire point of the Maquis was to make Star Trek Voyager. And what's funny is the Maquis storyline ended up being something that Deep Space Nine had to deal with as an afterthought. And it's really true. That's like Deep Space Nine was kind of left holding the bag on this whole stupid Maquis thing that was meant for Voyager. And then they had to finish it. And they actually did a pretty good job with it. They actually did some really cool stuff where they had members of the crew betray other members of the crew because they were involved with the Maquis, you know? Whereas on Voyager, that stuff just kind of went away. So that's my biggest problem with it, is I thought it was a really interesting concept that they just never executed on. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't be interested in seeing the behind the scenes. And I would love it if they would address some of that stuff. I don't think they will, but it'd be cool if they did.